book lovers. It is GSwiz here, and I'm here today to talk about some Romantasy series that are currently on my TBR. If you didn't know, this is a 7 on Sunday topic, and I'm the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the Goodreads page down in the description where you can check it out, and you can participate in a topic in the future, or you can suggest a topic. I am a huge fan of fantasy romance. I, at first, was one of those people who were reluctant to call fantasy romance romantasy. Like, honestly, I'm like, why would you put the two words together when it's much easier to say fantasy romance? I don't know. But then I got into the habit of using it, especially because I've noticed a lot of people at my workplace have been using this term. Publishers are now using this term. I'm still not a huge fan of it, but I still use it for convenience. Because every single time I'm in a conversation about fantasy romance, when I say fantasy romance and everyone else is using the term romantasy, I feel a little bit singled out. So I will use the term romantasy going forward, but shout out to those who still feel uncomfortable with using that term, because it still seems like it kind of does not make any sense, but I'm using it anyway. But for those who did not know what romantasy meant, it does mean fantasy romance. But I guess the one good thing about the term fantasy romance is that often in fantasy romance, the romance is often at the forefront of the story. So technically we should be calling it a romance fantasy. So that's why I guess romantasy makes it easier to say romance fantasy. Like, I feel weird saying romance fantasy. I feel comfortable saying fantasy romance because I have for years. Anyway, enough talking about the term itself, but fantasy romance slash romantasy tends to be my specific favorite subgenre of fantasy and romance. And I honestly reckon that's because I tend to love a high stakes romance. But don't get me wrong, you won't only find high stakes romance in fantasy romance. Like, there are dark romances out there are paranormal romances out there. Do I have any paranormal romance on my TBR? I'm pretty sure I have some paranormal romance I'm going to mention today as well. But I'm often finding that fantasy romance has a high stakes element to it, and I tend to enjoy that a lot in my romance books. Like, as much as I'm fine with reading stories where there is something like, I don't know, a failed event or miscommunication somewhere, you know, those romantic situations or those embarrassing romantic scenarios, as much as it does feel like the end of the world, there isn't really a high stakes situation there. It's usually just like a low stakes romance. It's not life or death. Whereas with fantasy romance, I'm often seeing life or death scenarios where the trope touch her and you'll die is there, or just like them fighting for each other physically, not just romantically, but physically. I don't know. There's just something about that that really grabs my attention, and that is why I have a lot of fantasy romance on my TBR. And I have a bunch that I'm gonna mention today that I literally picked up because I'm seeing them popular in Facebook groups, on Instagram, and TikTok, even though I don't technically watch TikTok because once I do, my brain will rot. But I just hear in places that TikTok made the romance boom, all that stuff, etc. Because we cannot stop hearing that. Like, we're seeing it in subtitles everywhere. It's the TikTok sensation, all that stuff, etc. Anyway, this intro has been long enough. Without further ado, let's get straight into this TBR. I will share some romantasy that I've placed on this TBR, and some of these are really chunky series. The first romantasy series I have to mention that I have on my TBR has been on my TBR for years, and I need to finally read The Raven and the Dove by Caitlin Davis. I love these covers so much. These covers were illustrated by one of my favorite illustrators, and that is Morgan O. Anagram. And I only just discovered that their artist pseudonym is their name, 0, and their name again backwards. I only recently found that out in an unboxing when I was opening some beautiful Sarah J. Maas cards up. But yeah, these covers are absolutely stunning. I remember seeing the cover for the first book, The Raven and the Dove, and just knowing that I needed to grab it immediately, but I still have not yet read these books. I know that these are like a fairy tale reimagining. Oh yeah, was it Tristan and Isolde? Yes, it is Tristan and Isolde. I was just about to say Adrian and Isolde, but that is a Scarlett St. Clair series and not a famous fairy tale. I don't know anything about the fairy tale that this has been based on, but I just saw these covers and I knew I needed to grab them. They just look so pretty, and I think I am in for a good romantic treat. I'm not expecting this series to be very dark, but if it is, I will kind of be pleasantly surprised. wishlist going into it because for some reason these covers just look way too wholesome. They're too pure for this world, in my personal opinion. I need to get to the series sometime soon. I think I even put this series on my series TBR for last year and I did not get to them. So I'm hoping to get to them sometime in the near future. I just need to prioritize them. I think whenever I just look at them on my shelves, I'm thinking, no one's talking about these days, so I will not pick them up. And I honestly need that to change because I love recommending underrated fantasy, and if this series is really good, it must be somewhat underrated. So I really hope to get to this one sometime to let you guys know how I go with it. But the next Romantasy series that I have to mention that is on my TBR is this series right here, the Of Flesh and Bone series, which actually is very hyped. So right here, the first book is What Lies Beyond the Veil, the second book is What Hunts Inside the Shadows, and the third book is What Lurks Between the Fates. I have the author's exclusive editions of these books because I really loved the covers. They are like shiny and it is annoying with my ring light, but I don't mind having these editions because I just love these covers so much. I am hearing amazing things about the series. I don't know how long this series is going to go for. Every single time the author announces a new book, they don't specify that it's going to be the final book in this series. I know that book 4 is either out or it's on its way to being published at the moment, and I suspect that there's also going to be a 5th book in the series as well, but I've just been hearing absolutely great things about this romance. A lot of people have been saying that it is one for ACOTAR lovers, and honestly, I don't really know much about it. I've just been told that this romance is amazing. I'm trusting the internet's word on this one because I went out of the way to go to the author's website to purchase these special editions, and I still have not yet read it. So I am planning to get to this one hopefully sometime soon. I think the reason why I've been putting it off is because I've been waiting for the series to be somewhat complete, meaning if I could at least read it somewhat close to completion, if I know that the final book is coming out soon, then I could get started on this book series. I don't know, I just don't want to be left on a terrible cliffhanger, so that is why I've not yet read this series, but I've heard incredible things about it. It's very hyped and everyone is still talking about it these days, unlike the last series I mentioned. So I should be motivated to pick this series up because it's still a topic of conversation at the moment. We'll see how I go with this one. But then the next Romantasy series I have to mention happens to be a complete one right here. I have the State of Grace series by Colette Rhodes. If you guys don't know, Colette Rhodes also wrote a monster romance. I think the first book is Luxuria. I actually met Colette Rhodes at Rare 2023 and she was absolutely lovely. And this right here is her Rare exclusive set of the State of Grace series. So if you can see on the spines, it says State of Grace. These are also exclusive covers as well. I don't know if you can purchase these exclusively from her website, but what I do know is that she mentioned that these are like event exclusives. And these are just absolutely beautiful. I mean, every single cover is kind of the same except with different text, but I just love the look of them. Like, they just look so gorgeous. And also, it was calling to me because it literally has my name on it. As soon as I saw Grace was in the title of the series, and even the final book in the series, I was like, you know what? That series has my name on it. I'm getting it. So I have this beautiful series, The State of Grace, set, but I still need to read it. I've been hearing great things about it. It is a Why Choose series with dark magic, and I don't know. Honestly, I think while I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna look at the female protagonist and gonna be like, oh my goodness, she is so me. Maybe it's because I've seen fan art of her and I've seen that the protagonist is a brunette as well. I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, she's so me. I don't know. Maybe it's also because Grace is in the title of the series. I've heard great things, especially from a friend of mine. A friend of mine absolutely loves the series, so I also want to read the series to let her know how I feel about it as well. I hope I love it just as much as her. Can't wait to get to the series. Thankfully, it's complete. I'm planning to get to the series probably sometime within the year, or at least close to that. But the next Romantasy series that I've been putting off due to its length and due to also not knowing when it's gonna end is the Divine Blood series by Beck Michaels. I thought Shattered Souls was the final book in the series and I was so excited to start reading it, and then I found out that Rising Dawn was coming out, and the author, Beck Michaels, still hasn't specified that Rising Dawn is going to be the final book in the series, similarly to Harper L. Woods with the Of Flesh and Bone series. A similar situation where I just assume that everything is a trilogy, and then the author announces that they're going to do another book, but they don't announce that it's going to be the finale in the series. I don't know how long the series is going to go for. I do know that her Fairy Tale Reimaginings series, the one where The King's Bride is the first book in the series, I know that that's going to be a 7-book series, series, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, did I just sign myself up for another long book series? I don't know how long this series is gonna be, but Shattered Souls itself is a thick boy, like thick with two C's. This book is an 800-page book. Oh my goodness, that is a Sarah J Maas novel. I'm kind of hoping I enjoy it more than a Sarah J Maas novel. Overall, I can't wait to get to these books because I've heard great things about Beck Michaels' works. I've heard that this series is absolutely divine, pun intended. I want to get to the series sometime soon. I just don't know when. I don't know when the series is gonna be close to finishing, but what I do know is that I've heard great things. And so I'm definitely motivated to read it, but I also don't want to be left off on a cliffhanger. And yes, once again, I am breaking it up with a completed trilogy, thank goodness. Right here, I have the Fever trilogy. I don't actually know what this trilogy is called, or the Celestial trilogy. No, sorry, Angels of Elysium. Oh my goodness, I don't, oh, there's the title. I missed it. I was looking at the top and bottom of this cover, but it's actually at the center of this cover underneath it. This is a companion trilogy from what I know. And the reason why I say that is because we seem to have different characters on each of the Naked hardbacks. Also, these beautiful new standard editions, repackaged, just look absolutely stunning. I also absolutely adore the illustrator's work. Gemlin C is the illustrator of these beautiful Naked hardbacks. Let me show you book number 2. Like, look at that. Oh my goodness, so beautiful. I don't know if this is just gonna be a series where we have like a big cast of characters or if each individual book follows a specific couple. But what I do know is that I'm really excited for the series because I've heard great things about it. I initially was gonna get the Arcane Society exclusive editions, but I did not love the Arcane Society designs, which is very rare for me. But honestly, when I saw the teaser, I was like, no, like that cover design is not for me. So I'm really happy I held off because I also did not like the standard covers initially either, but I'm so happy that Olivia Wildenstein did a repackage of these books because oh my goodness, I am not the biggest fan of like the standard cover, but the Gemlin C art underneath them looks absolutely stunning. And I've just seen people beg different book boxes to do special editions for the series, and I'm just really happy to have the standard editions because these are just beautiful. And I've heard great things about Olivia Wildenstein's works. I've definitely wanted to read their other books like House of Beating Wings and then The Boulder Wolves as well eventually. And honestly, I don't know whether or not the Angels of Elysium will be the first book series I get to from them, but it could be because this was the first book series I ever heard about from Olivia Wildenstein. I do plan on getting to House of Beating Wings this year, but I also somewhat want to get to this series this year as well. I reckon that this series is going to be a really fun time. I think out of all the series I've mentioned so far, this series is the one I will most likely get to first. I think it's because this one just seems so easy peasy, and also it's a nice paranormal romance that follows angels. What more could I want? And the next Romantasy series that I have to mention is on my TBR is this series right here, the Four Kingdoms series by Whitney Dean. I had the honor of receiving the first book, A Kingdom of Flame and Fury, for my birthday from a work colleague, and then at work, funnily enough, we were given vouchers as a reward, and then I was able to get the next two. So technically, I did not pay anything for the series. I'm so happy that I have these books in my collection now, and I honestly cannot wait to get to these books because I've heard great things about these books. Every single time the author, Whitney Dean, posts very spicy fan art of her characters, it just makes me want to read these books even more. But I've heard that this series is a very high stakes series as well, and I reckon that I am going to absolutely fall in love with these characters, but also I'm going to feel so much anxiety while reading this book series because I've just heard that it's a lot. But I'm also kind of waiting for the books to be closer to completion, and I honestly don't know if the Four Kingdoms title itself implies that it's going to be a 4-book series. I do know that there is another book coming out in the series, but I don't know how long the series is going to be. These books are also really chunky as well. Yeah, this final book is almost 700 pages, and the books that come before it seem to be of a very similar length. I mean, they're probably not as thick as this last book in the series, but they're all still very thick books. So I am definitely going to mentally prepare myself for all of this. I don't know if it's going to be tragic. I have a feeling it's going to be tragic, but in like the best way possible, like a high stakes romance should be. I am expecting this series to have really high stakes. I've heard about readers being absolutely heartbroken by the series, but also mended by the series, so I am hoping, fingers crossed, that that will be me. We'll see how I go. I really hope I devour this series and that it becomes one of my favorite series of all time. I have a feeling that these books are like potential 5-star books. And the next Romantasy series that I've put on my TBR is The Prince of the Doomed Strange City series by Sylvia Mercedes. I currently have the first 4 books in my collection, but the 5th book is actually on its way to me because I'm a series binger. It's what I do. But also, these covers are absolutely stunning, and as soon as I saw that these books were repackaged, I was like, you know what? They're mine. I don't care if I haven't read the series yet. These are just so beautiful. Like, I can't deal with how beautiful these illustrations are. They're just stunning. I love them. This series, I believe, contains Faye and a librarian, and I was like, you know what? Say no more. It's mine. I cannot wait to read the series and finish it sometime, hopefully, maybe this year, because the final book's already out. The final book actually came out, I believe, in the last month of 2023. I have been told that it is one of Sylvia Mercedes' best series. This and the Frost King series. I'm trying to remember what that series is. Oh, the Shadow King? The one that Daphne Press recently picked up. I actually pre-ordered the Illumicrate special editions of that series, and that should hopefully be on its way to me soon. I wanted to read that series or get to this series sometime soon, but I have these books right now in my physical collection, so I plan to get to these books sometime sooner rather than later. I don't know, there's just something about magical libraries and high-stakes romance, once again, that really intrigues me. I have a feeling that this series is going to be somewhat tragic as well. It's giving me some doom and gloom vibes, but I don't hate that. I do, however, hope that this series feels wholesome at the end of the day and that it will just touch me. And the second last Romantasy series that I have to mention that is on my TBR is Fortuna Sworn. This series has been on my TBR for years. I wanted to get to Fortuna Sworn as soon as I saw it like on my Amazon algorithm back when it was independently published, and then I purchased the Bookish Box special editions, and I recently also got the Fairy Loot special editions, and what am I doing to myself? I don't know. These editions are absolutely stunning. I've heard great things about the series. I've heard heartbreaking things about the series. I have heard a rumor that this series is starting to go into the Why Choose direction, and you know what? I think based on how many love interests have been introduced in the series, or at least based on the reverse dust jackets on these books, I wouldn't blame the author for potentially doing that. Like, these two guys, I believe they're different people, right? Yeah, like, what is this, you know? Yeah, I really don't know how this series is gonna go romantically. That is why I've been holding off from continuing on with the series until we're closer to the 6th and final book. But I hear that the series is absolutely incredible. It is somewhat tragic from what I've heard, but I've heard really good things about the series as well. It's actually the favorite book series of the Bookish Box CEO, and that's why they did this beautiful set for it. I hear that it is a favorite book series of many. So I'm hoping to get to this one kind of later rather than sooner, only because I want to be closer to the 6th book before I start the series, and I want to be fully prepared for what will happen in that 6th book. I really hope that this series ends off in the best way possible, because I believe that everyone is kind of uncertain as to what direction this series will take, but I know it's going to break my heart. It's definitely going to break my heart, that's for sure. I just sense that this book series is going to break my heart. And last but certainly not least, I have this anthology series right here, which is the Mortal Lovers and Monster Lovers series. I really don't remember what the series title is, but I'll put the series name as a subtitle. The first book being Slaying the Vampire Conqueror. This one's by Carissa Broadbent. The second book is Slaying the Shifter Prince, and this one is by Claire Sager. The third book in the series, this one is my favorite cover. Oh my gosh, I absolutely adore it. This is Slaying the Frost King by Candace Robinson and Elle Beaumont. Oh, so gorgeous. The fourth book in the series, Slaying the Maga King, which is by Jessica M. Butler. And last but certainly not least, Slaying the Shadow Prince by Helen Schruber. I have heard great things about this anthology series. Honestly, I'm not too sure if every Romantasy reader out there has read the entire series, and that is probably because they specifically want to read the Carissa Broadbent book and the Helen Schruber book. But honestly, I do want to read the entire series, and I do want to discover these new authors. The only author I've read from in this stack is Carissa Broadbent, and Carissa Broadbent is one of my favorite authors of all time because I absolutely adore the War of Lost Hearts series, but I do want to discover some new favorite Romantasy authors. I've heard great things about Claire Sager and Helen Schruber, and honestly, I don't know much about the other authors that have joined this collaboration, but I do want to read their works eventually, and I think that this is a great way to discover new authors and to work out whether or not they will be a potential favorite and whether or not you would want to read more books from them in the future. So that is what I'm planning to do with this series. I don't know whether or not I will binge read this series, and I think I won't, because these stories are very different from each other. I don't think that they take place within the same universe. I think that these books actually take place within the universes that the authors have previously established, but they are standalones. Actually, I found the name of the series. It is the Mortal Enemies to Monster Lovers series. It's actually at the bottom of each hardback. I also really love these illustrations. I think a big reason why I picked this book series up was because I love the covers so much. But I definitely was also going to pick up the Carissa Broadbent book because I think she's an auto-buy author for me, especially after the War of Lost Hearts. I don't know whether or not I will get to them this year. These aren't a priority for me, but I think sometime after reading Serpent and the Wings of Night, I will get to the Carissa Broadbent book at least. So I guess it's going to be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the green heart emoji. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzelbooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also at Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later.